Revenge with Karen.
I knew things were seriously messed up when the server rack hummed a frequency that sounded suspiciously like a dying cat wheezing its last breath. It was 8:45 p.m. on a Tuesday, the kind of Tuesday that feels like it's been going on since the previous Thursday, and I was deep in the bowels of the digital infrastructure of Next Level Solutions. You know the type of place. Exposed brick walls that cost more than my mortgage, in bag chairs that smell like unwashed intern and desperation, and a coffee machine that requires a PhD to operate, but still dispenses sludge that tastes like burnt rubber. I'm Molly. I'm 45. I have a lower back that clicks like a Geiger counter when it rains, and I am a platform operations engineer. That's a fancy way of saying I'm the glorified mechanic for a race car driven by toddlers. I was staring at a wall of code that looked like the Matrix had a stroke, trying to patch a memory leak that our lead developer, a 24-year-old named Braden who wears beanies in August, had introduced because he thought optimization was for boomers. The air in the office was stale, recycled, and smelled faintly of ozone and the overpriced sushi someone had microwaved 3 hours ago. By the way, if you're enjoying this descent into corporate madness, me a favor and smash subscribe. It helps the algorithm know that people still appreciate a good train wreck, and honestly, it motivates the hell out of us to keep sharing these war stories. All right, back to the grime. I wasn't just working late for the fun of it. I was working late because we were approaching the Q1 launch. In corporate speak, that's the holy grail. In my world, it's the apocalypse. It secured $70 million in Series B funding, based entirely on a slide deck that promised technology we didn't actually have yet. And who was building the bridge while the train was already on the tracks? Me, just me. I typed a command, watched the CPU load drop from a terrifying 98% to a manageable 45%, and took a sip of lukewarm Diet Coke. The fizz was gone. It tasted like syrup and regret. My phone buzzed. It was a notification from my banking app. Balance, not enough for a mental breakdown in Bali. I sighed. I was waiting for the golden goose, the carrot they had dangled in front of my face 5 years ago when I signed the offer letter. A $30,000 retention bonus. 30 grand. To some of the suits upstairs, that's a weekend in Aspen. To me, that was my get-out-of-debt card. That was a new roof for my mom's house. That was the ability to finally fix the transmission on my Subaru that sounded like a bag of hammers every time I shifted into second gear. I opened my email for the 1,000th time that day, searching for payroll or HR. Nothing. Just a blast email from the culture committee reminding us that Friday was Hawaiian shirt day. I wanted to scream. I wanted to take my ergonomic keyboard and put it through the drywall. I had been carrying this company. It wasn't the face on the website. I wasn't the guy in the Patagonia vest shaking hands with investors. I was the one making sure that when a customer clicked login, the database didn't vomit an error code from 1999. I was the one who spent Christmas Eve 3 years ago rerouting traffic because a DDoS attack hit us while the CEO was skiing in Zermatt. I saved the company that night. My reward, a $50 Amazon gift card and a good job. Email where they misspelled my name. But this bonus was different. It was in writing. Upon completion of 5 years of service and successful infrastructure scaling, the contract said, I had scaled the infrastructure. I had scaled it so hard it was technically illegal in 3 countries, kidding, mostly. I had hit the 5-year mark 2 weeks ago. I closed my laptop, the screen going black, reflecting my own tired face. Dark circles under the eyes, hair pulled back in a bun that was more structural integrity than style. I looked like a woman who knew where the bodies were buried because she was the one who dug the holes. The office was empty, except for the cleaning crew. I nodded to Alina, a sweet woman who worked harder than the entire C-suite combined. She was emptying the recycling bin full of empty White Claw cans from the sales team's strategy session. Late night, Miss Molly? She asked, voice echoing in the open plan workspace. Always, Alina. Someone has to make sure the internet doesn't break, I said, grabbing my coat. It was a heavy wool thing, practical, tailored for Washington winters where the rain doesn't fall. It just kind of exists in the air around you. I walked to the elevator, the silence of the office pressing in on me. I looked at the sleek logo on the wall, Next Level Solutions, disrupting the future. I wanted to disrupt their faces. See, problem wasn't just the work. It was the change in management. The original founder, a guy named Old School Dave, had cashed out and retired to a vineyard. In his place, he left his son, Lucas. Lucas was 32 going on 12. He was the acting CFO now. He had an MBA that his daddy bought him and a collection of watches that cost more than my annual salary. He walked around the office like he was playing a character in The Wolf of Wall Street. He lacked the charisma or the criminal intelligence. He just had the entitlement, a pure, uncut, Colombian-grade entitlement. Lucas had been sniffing around my department for months. Budget bloat, he called it, legacy costs. He looked at my server costs and saw waste. I looked at my server costs and saw the only reason his email worked. He looked at my salary and saw a line item he could trim. I looked at my salary and saw underpayment for services rendered. I got into my car, the cold leather seat biting through my jeans. I cranked the engine, praying the transmission held together. It groaned, protested, but caught. I sat there for a minute, gripping the steering wheel, staring at the rain streaking the windshield. 30,000, I whispered to the dashboard. Where is it? I had a bad feeling. A feeling that started in my gut and worked its way up to the base of my neck. It was the same feeling I got when I saw a junior dev push to production on a Friday afternoon, the feeling of impending doom. I put the car in gear and drove home, the wipers slapping a rhythm against the glass. Slap, slap, liar, slap, slap, thief. I didn't know it then, but the storm wasn't outside. It was waiting for me at the Christmas party, and it was going to be a Category 5 shitstorm named Lucas. I was just the idiot driving right into the eye of it, thinking I was just going there for the free shrimp and my check. God, I was naive. I thought contracts mattered. I thought loyalty meant something other than a punchline. I was about to learn that in the corporate world, loyalty is just a debt they never intend to pay. But they forgot one thing about platform engineers. We don't just build the systems, we hold the keys. And if you lock the janitor out of the building, you better hope the toilets don't back up. Because when they do, nobody else knows how to work the plunger. The annual Next Level Christmas party was held at a venue called the Gilded Cage, which I thought was a bit on the nose, but irony is dead in the tech sector. It was a repurposed warehouse in downtown Seattle, filled with enough Edison bulbs to light a runway and enough fake greenery to confuse a koala. The theme was Winter Wonderland, which meant the AC was cranked down to Arctic levels, and everyone was shivering in their cocktail attire. I hate these things. I hate them with the burning passion of 1,000 suns. It's forced socialization with people I spend 40 hours a week trying to avoid. But I was there for one reason, and one reason only: the end-of-year payout. I was wearing a black dress that I'd had for 10 years. It was clean, it fit, and it blended into the shadows, which is exactly where I wanted to be. I navigated the room like I navigated a corrupted database, carefully, avoiding the unstable elements. The unstable elements in this case being the sales team, who were already 5 shots of tequila deep and trying to harmonize to Mariah Carey. I grabbed a glass of white wine from a passing waiter. It tasted like vinegar and battery acid. Perfect. It matched my mood. I scanned the room for Lucas. He wasn't hard to find. He was in the center of the VIP section, which was just a roped-off area on a slightly elevated platform, because apparently looking down on your employees physically wasn't enough. You had to do it topographically too. He was wearing a velvet suit, a red velvet suit. He looked like a seductive sofa. I took a deep breath, steeled my nerves, and began the trek across the dance floor. I dodged a conga line led by HR, of course, and sidestepped a crying intern who had apparently just been dumped near the chocolate fountain. Molly, the mallster, the Mollinator, I winced, was Chad, the VP of marketing. Chad was the kind of guy who used words like synergy and ideation unironically and high-fived you a little too hard. "Hello, Chad," I said, not breaking stride. "Where's the holiday spirit? You look like you're going to a funeral." He laughed, slapping me on the shoulder. "Just looking for Lucas, Chad. Have you seen him?" "Oh, the big man. Yeah, he's up in the Olympus section." "Hey, great job on the uptime this month. Emails are flying. Zoom, zoom." He made a rocket ship motion with his hand. "Thanks, Chad. Don't click on any links from Nigerian princes," I said, moving past him. I reached the velvet rope. The bouncer, a guy named Tiny, who I actually got along with because I once fixed his Wi-Fi, nodded and lifted the rope. "Give him hell, Molly," he muttered. "Just getting what's mine, Tiny," I replied. I walked up the steps. The air up here smelled different, smelled of expensive cologne and fear. Lucas was holding court with a few board members, laughing loudly at a joke that definitely wasn't funny. He saw me approaching and his smile didn't falter, but his eyes went cold. It was the look a shark gives a seal before it decides if it's hungry or just bored. "Molly," he announced, spreading his arms wide. "The engine room herself. Come to join the festivities?" "Hi, Lucas," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Nice suit. Very festive. It's bespoke," he said, smoothing the lapel. "Italian velvet. You have to touch it to believe it. I'll take your word for it." "Listen, Lucas, can I borrow you for a second? It's about the admin stuff." He sighed, a dramatic, theatrical sigh that shook his whole body. "Molly, Molly, Molly, it's a party. Can't we leave the shop talk for Monday? We're here to celebrate." "It's actually about my retention bonus," I said, cutting through his bullshit. 5-year mark passed 2 weeks ago. HR said it needed your signature. I haven't seen it hit my account." The group around him went quiet. Money talk at a party is tacky, but not paying your employees is tackier. Lucas chuckled, shaking his head like I was a toddler asking for a pony. "Ah, yes, the bonus." He took a sip of his whiskey. "About that." My stomach dropped. "About that?" He leaned in, his breath smelling of aged scotch and mints. "We've been auditing the books, looking at value versus cost. And frankly, $30,000 is a significant capital outlay for maintenance. It's in my contract, Lucas," I said, my voice dropping an octave. "It's not a discretionary tip. It's a contract. Contracts are open to interpretation based on performance metrics," he said smoothly, reciting a line he probably learned from a lawyer earlier that day. "And I've been looking at your hours. You're always late. You're always working remote, pivoting to a more present culture." "I work remote because I'm fixing servers at 3 a.m. while you're asleep." I snapped, losing my cool for a fraction of a second. "And I'm late because I was here until midnight the night before." "Excuses, excuses," he waved his hand dismissively. "Look, Molly, we can discuss a performance improvement plan in the new year. Maybe if you hit some new KPIs, we can revisit a reduced bonus structure. But the 30 grand, that's not happening. I already reallocated those funds to the executive retreat in Tahoe. We need to boost morale at the top, you understand." The world tilted on its axis. He stole it. He literally stole my money to pay for a ski trip for himself and his cronies. "You reallocated my wages?" I asked, the words tasting like ash. "It's not wages, it's a bonus." "Discretionary," he smirked. A cruel little smirk. "Now, why don't you grab a slider and lighten up? You're bringing down the vibe." I stood there, frozen. The bass from the DJ booth thumped in my chest. Thump, thump, thump. It matched the pounding of the rage building behind my eyes. He thought I was just some middle-aged lady he could bully. He thought I was powerless because I didn't wear a suit and didn't shout. He turned his back on me to talk to a board member. "She's a bit high-strung," I heard him say. "Legacy hire. Working on modernizing." I should have walked away. I should have gone to my car and cried. That's what he wanted. He wanted me to fade away. But I didn't. I stood my ground, and I made the mistake of pushing back. "Lucas," I said, loud enough for the table to hear, "I want that money tonight, or I'm calling the labor board." He turned back around slowly. The smirk was gone. In its place was the petulant rage of a rich kid who had never been told no in his entire life. "Did you say to me?" he hissed. And that's when the music stopped. Literally. The DJ was changing tracks, but the timing couldn't have been more perfect, or more disastrous. The silence in the VIP section bled outward, infecting the nearby tables, until a hush fell over a good quarter of the warehouse. All eyes were on the red velvet suit and the woman in the 10-year-old black dress. Lucas's face turned a shade of mottled purple that clashed horribly with his jacket. He stepped closer to me, invading my personal space. I could see the pores on his nose, clogged with expensive foundation. "You're threatening me," he said, his voice rising. "In my company, at my party." "It's not your company, Lucas. It's the shareholders," I corrected him, which was the tactical equivalent of throwing gasoline on a grease fire. "And I'm not threatening. I'm stating a fact. You owe me. I don't owe you a damn thing," he shouted, throwing his arms up. Whiskey in his glass sloshed over the rim, staining the carpet. "You want to talk about money? Let's talk about money. Let's talk about the hardware budget discrepancies." My brow furrowed. "What discrepancies?" "The price of GPUs went up. I documented everything." "Liar," he screamed. It was a shrill, cracking sound. He pointed a manicured finger at my face. "You've been padding the invoices." I saw the numbers. "Funneling company funds into your own pocket and calling it server maintenance." A collective gasp went through the crowd. I felt like I had been punched in the throat. It was so absurd, so patently false, that my brain couldn't process it for a second. I was the one who reused paperclips to save money. I was the one who fought for cheaper cloud contracts. That is insanity, I said, my voice trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of pure shock. Have receipts for every cent. Oh, I'm sure you do. Lucas laughed, turning to the crowd, playing to his audience now. She's smart, everyone. The quiet ones always are. Embezzlement 101, hide it in the boring stuff nobody checks. He turned back to me, his eyes gleaming with malicious triumph. He had found his angle. He wasn't just denying me the bonus, he was destroying me so I couldn't fight back. You're fired, he spat. Effective immediately. Get out. If you're not off the premises in 5 minutes, I'm calling the police and having you dragged out in handcuffs. I looked over at the CEO, Lucas's dad, Dave, who was sitting in a corner booth. He looked up, glassy-eyed, mumbled something to his young girlfriend, and looked away. He wasn't going to save me. The old guard was dead. I looked at my colleagues. Chad looked at his shoes. The HR director was furiously typing on her phone. The junior devs I had mentored, ones whose code I had fixed 1,000 times, were staring at me with wide, fearful eyes. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke up. The injustice of it burned like acid in my veins. 5 years. Nights, weekends, holidays, missed birthdays, missed dates. I gave this place my life. And this trust fund clown was accusing me of stealing the peanuts while he gorged on the banquet. Something inside me snapped. But it wasn't a loud snap. It was the quiet click of a breaker tripping to save the circuit. The emotion drained out of me, leaving behind a cold, crystalline clarity. If they wanted me to be the villain, fine. I'd be the villain, but I wouldn't be the kind that screams. I'd be the kind that waits. I straightened my posture. I smoothed the front of my dress. I looked Lucas dead in the eye. He flinched just slightly. He expected tears. He expected begging. He didn't expect the void. Okay, I said. My voice was soft, but in the silence of the warehouse, it carried like a bell. I reached into my purse, pulled out my keycard, the all-access pass that opened every door, every server rack, every secure room, and placed it gently on the table next to his drink. There's my access, I said. I'll expect my final paycheck mailed to my home address. I turned to leave, then paused. I looked back at him one last time. Oh, and Lucas? I said, a small, polite smile touching my lips. Just make sure you handle tonight's certificate renewal manually. The script was set to run under my user ID. I don't need your technical mumbo-jumbo. Lucas scoffed, waving me away. We have a whole team of people who can handle a certificate. Go, I nodded. Good luck with the Q1 launch. Your entire platform goes dark tonight if you miss it. I walked away. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. I could feel their eyes on my back, judgment, pity, relief that it wasn't them. I walked past the chocolate fountain, past the DJ who was tentatively starting to play Jingle Bell Rock, and out the heavy metal doors into the cool, rainy Seattle night. I didn't cry. I didn't scream at the sky. I walked to my beat-up Subaru, got in, and locked the doors. The silence of the car was a sanctuary. Certificate renewal, I whispered to myself, and a dark, twisted laugh bubbled up from my chest. See, thing about SSL certificates is that they are the digital handshake of the internet. If they expire, your website doesn't just stop working, it becomes a pariah. Browsers block it. Apps crash. Data connections are severed. It's the digital equivalent of the power company cutting the lines. And Lucas was right about one thing. He did have a team. But what Lucas didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the root access, the keys to the kingdom, encrypted with a chaotic 4096-bit key that lived on a USB drive on my keychain, and the automated cron jobs that kept the heartbeat of the system going. They checked for my specific user signature every 24 hours. He had just fired the heartbeat. I put the key in the ignition. I wasn't going to hack them. I wasn't going to delete a single file. That would be illegal. That would be wrong. I was just going to go home, or a very large glass of whiskey, and let nature take its course. They said I was redundant. Let's see how the engine runs without the spark plugs. My apartment was cold when I got home. I didn't turn on the heat. I didn't want comfort. I wanted clarity. I kicked off my heels near the door and walked straight to my desk in the corner of the living room. This was my command center. 3 monitors, a mechanical keyboard that clacked like gunfire, a Herman Miller chair that was the only luxury I allowed myself. I sat down and woke the beast. The screens flickered to life, casting a blue glow over my hands. My fingers hovered over the keys. Strictly speaking, I was fired. Accessing the system now was gray, but I knew how HR worked. They were at a party. The IT guy who handled offboarding was probably doing shots of tequila off an ice sculpture right now. Access wouldn't be revoked until Monday morning when someone sobered up enough to remember Lucas's tantrum. I tunneled in. VPN connected. Two-factor authentication pinged my phone. I approved it. I was in. First stop, the audit logs. I needed to know. I needed to see the knife they buried in my back. I navigated to the finance folders I had access to because I was the one who set up the automated payroll systems. I wasn't supposed to look. Then again, they weren't supposed to call me an embezzler. There it was. A transaction dated October 15th. Employee retention allocation Vance status canceled. Rerouted to Executive Leadership Development Lake Tahoe offsite. Authorized by L. Davenport, Lucas. He had planned this. It wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision because of budget cuts. He had stolen my money 2 months ago to pay for his deposit on a luxury lodge, sat in meetings with me, asked me to work weekends, smiled at me in the hallway, all while knowing he had already robbed me. The rage that washed over me was different this time. It wasn't hot, it was absolute zero. It was the temperature of deep space. "Okay, Lucas," I whispered, the sound deadened by the acoustic foam on my walls. "You want to play pirates? Let's see who owns the ship." I opened a terminal window. The command line blinked at me, a patient, hitting cursor. I checked the infrastructure status, green across the board. The system was humming. It was beautiful, really. A symphony of Docker containers and Kubernetes clusters I had orchestrated over 5 years. It was my child. And now, custody had been awarded to an abusive parent. I checked the user permissions. My account, Vance admin, was still the root owner of the deployment pipeline. The deployment pipeline is the assembly line. Nothing goes from code to customer without passing through it. And then I checked the scheduled tasks, the cron jobs. There were dozens of them. Database backups, log rotations, cache clearing, and the big one, certificate renewal and licensing auth. It was set to run at 0300 UTC. That was in 4 hours. The script was simple. It pinged a secure server, verified the cryptographic signature of the admin, me, then refreshed the security tokens that allowed our software to talk to the cloud providers, Oz, Azure. If the signature failed, or if the user was disabled, the script would fail. If the script failed, the tokens would expire. If the tokens expired, the cloud providers would shut us down. Not immediately. It would be a slow suffocation. First, the database would lock. Then the API would stop responding. Then the front end would throw 503 errors. I hovered my finger over the delete key. I could remove the dependency. I could set it to run on a generic service account. I could be the bigger person. I could save them from themselves, walk away with my head held high, and fight them in court for the money. I thought about the vintage fit of the Vietnam jacket in the prompt. Wait, wrong story. Focus, Molly. I thought about Lucas screaming liar, in front of everyone. I thought about the $30,000. I thought about the smug look on his face as he dismissed 5 years of my life as maintenance. I didn't delete the dependency. Instead, I opened a separate script, my personal offboarding protocol. It didn't destroy data. It simply scrubbed my personal digital footprint. It removed my saved passwords from the shared vault. It deleted my personal notes from the wiki, the how-to guides I had written for the juniors that they never read anyway. Removed my private SSH keys from the jump box. I was cleaning out my desk. Just, digitally, as I executed the script, a warning popped up. Warning, removing these keys may interrupt automated services dependent on Vance admin. Proceed. I looked at the screen. The cursor blinked. Proceed. It wasn't sabotage. It was compliance. I was fired. I had no right to leave my keys in the lock. If they couldn't open the door without me, wasn't my fault. That was a design flaw they should have noticed when they decided to fire the architect. I typed enter. The terminal scrolled text rapidly. Keys removed. Access tokens flushed. Session terminated. I sat back. The connection died. The screen went black. It was done. I was officially out. I walked to the kitchen and opened the cabinet. I bypassed the wine and went for the bottle of Lagavulin 16 I kept for special occasions. I poured 2 fingers. No ice. I took a sip, the smoky peat coating my throat. I looked at the clock. 11:15 p.m. In roughly 4 hours, Next Level Solutions was going to have a heart attack, and the only heart surgeon in the building had just been escorted out by security. I carried my drink to the window and looked out at the rain-slicked streets of Seattle. Somewhere out there, Lucas was probably doing lines of coke in the bathroom of the Gilded Cage, bragging about how he trimmed the fat. "Enjoy the party, boys," I said to the glass. "It's going to be a hell of a hangover." I slept like a baby who knew that the house was slowly filling with carbon monoxide, but slept nonetheless. I woke up at 9 a.m. It was Saturday. The rain had stopped, leaving behind a gray, flat sky that looked like unpolished steel. I reached for my phone, half expecting it to be blown up with missed calls and panicked texts. Nothing. It was disturbing. Had they fixed it? Had Lucas actually hired a secret team of ninjas? Or, and this was more likely, were they so incompetent that they hadn't even noticed the system was bleeding out yet? I made coffee, strong, black. I sat on my patio wrapped in a blanket, checking my LinkedIn. I had updated my status to open to work right before I passed out last night. 3 messages already. One was from a recruiter who sounded like a bot. One was from a crypto startup that I wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole. But the third was from Sarah Jenkins. Sarah was the CTO of Ironclad Security. I had worked with her on a freelance audit 2 years ago. We had bonded over our mutual hatred of Jira tickets and people who used password 123. Message: "Saw the green banner, Molly. Please tell me you finally left that circus. Call me. Have an opening for a senior site reliability engineer. Pay is 40% over whatever they were giving you, plus equity that isn't monopoly money." I smiled. It was the first genuine smile I'd had in months. 40% raise, a boss who knew code. It was the dream, I called her. The interview lasted 15 minutes. It was mostly us catching up and her venting about her current infrastructure. By 10:30 a.m., I had a verbal offer. Official letter was hitting my inbox by noon. I should have been popping champagne. I had landed on my feet. I had upgraded. I was free. But I couldn't stop looking at my other monitor. I still had a read-only dashboard on my personal tablet, a public status page that Next Level used for clients. It was all green check marks. System operational. API response, 45 ms. Database load, low. Why was it still up? Certificates should have failed at 3 a.m. I felt a pang of anxiety. Did I mess up the expiration? Did I accidentally leave a backdoor open? If nothing happened, Lucas wins. If nothing happens, he was right, I was redundant. Then I saw it, a tiny flicker. The API response jumped from 45 ms to 200 ms, then 500 ms. Then a yellow warning triangle appeared next to authentication services. Status, degraded, was starting. The certificates hadn't hard failed yet. They had entered the grace period of cache. The system was running on memory, like a chicken running with its head cut off. It was still moving, but it was already dead. The moment the cache cleared or the moment the load increased, it would crash. My phone buzzed. It wasn't Sarah. It was a text from Braden, the beanie-wearing lead dev. "Braden, hey Molly, sorry to bother you on the weekend. Are you seeing weird latency on the auth servers? I can't log into the admin panel. Says invalid token." My thumb hovered over the screen. I could tell him. I could say, "Braden, the SSL certs expired because they were tied to my user ID. You need to manually generate a new CSR and rekey the load balancer." If I told him, he could fix it in an hour. But if I told him, I was working. I was working for a company that had fired me for theft. I was helping the man who stole my money. I remembered Lucas's face. Liar, embezzler. I put the phone down. I didn't reply. The degraded status turned to partial outage. Another text, this time from the VP of engineering, a guy named Marcus who usually ignored me unless he needed someone to blame. "Marcus, Molly, pick up. We have a situation. Lucas says you messed something up before you left. We need the keys." Lucas says, "Even in chaos, we're blaming me." I took a deep breath. This was the hard part, the part where I had to kill the helper inside me, the part of me that defined my self-worth by my ability to fix things. I wasn't their fixer anymore. I was a stranger. I typed a reply to Marcus. "Molly, I was terminated effective immediately on Friday night. I surrendered my hardware and my credentials. I have no access and no company property. Please direct all inquiries to your legal department. Send." I blocked the number. The status page on my tablet refreshed. Status, critical outage, service, all. The green checkmarks were gone, replaced by angry red X's. I felt a knot in my stomach, not guilt, but a heavy, somber realization. I was watching a building collapse in slow motion, and I was the only one who knew why the foundation had given way. "You wanted the keys, Lucas," I said to the empty room. "Got them?" They're just buried under 5 years of spaghetti code you never bothered to understand. I turned my attention back to the offer letter from Ironclad. I started typing my acceptance, but my hands were shaking, just a little. Sunday passed in a blur of silence and vibrating phones. I kept my phone on Do Not Disturb, allowing only calls from my mom and Sarah, my new boss. But I could see the notifications piling up like snow against a drift. 15 missed calls from Marcus, 4 from HR, even one from a number I recognized as Lucas's personal cell. I didn't answer. I went grocery shopping. I bought expensive cheese. I bought a bottle of wine that didn't have a screw top. I was practicing the art of being unbothered. But Monday morning, the narrative shifted. I was drinking my coffee, scrolling through industry news, when I saw it. A post on a tech gossip blog, Valleywag. X-Level Solutions suffering major outage days before $70M launch. CFO claims sabotage. I clicked the link, my knuckles white on the mouse. The article quoted an internal source, Lucas, obviously. We are experiencing a temporary disruption due to a malicious attack by a disgruntled former employee, the source stated. Security protocols were breached, but we are confident in our recovery timeline. Q1 launch will proceed as scheduled this Wednesday. In fact, we are moving the press demo up by 2 hours to show our resilience. Malicious attack. Breached. He was doubling down. He wasn't just firing me, he was framing me for a federal crime. He was telling the world I was a hacker to cover his own incompetence. My blood ran cold. This wasn't a game anymore. This was my reputation, my career. If this stuck, Ironclad would pull their offer. I'd be blacklisted. My phone pinged with a signal message. It was encrypted. Unknown number, don't freak out, it's Tyler, from the NOC. Tyler was a junior sysadmin. Good kid, smart but timid. Molly, hey Tyler. I assume the building is on fire? Tyler. It's a dumpster fire inside a nuclear reactor, Molly. Nobody can log in. AWS is rejecting our tokens. The devs are trying to hard-code bypasses, but everything is encrypted with your old public key. Lucas is screaming at everyone. He told the investors it's a ransomware attack. Molly, ransomware? Is he insane? Tyler, he's panicked. He thinks if we just restart the servers, it'll fix it. He ordered a hard reset of the production cluster. I stared at the screen, a hard reset. Molly, Tyler, tell me he didn't. Tyler, he did. We're rebooting now. He thinks it'll flush the virus. I closed my eyes. Hard reset on a cluster with expired authentication tokens wouldn't flush a virus. It would corrupt the data volumes. Without the keys to decrypt the storage upon reboot, the data would be locked. Forever. He wasn't just locking the door, he was welding it shut with the people inside. Molly, Tyler, listen to me. Do not touch the database. If you reboot the DB nodes without the master key, you lose the customer data. Tyler, I tried to tell him, fired the last guy who spoke up. He's standing behind the console right now shouting, do it. Tyler, it's done. He pushed the button. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. It was over. The data was encrypted at rest. The keys were gone, deleted by my script. The backups. Well, the backups were encrypted with the same keys. Lucas had just wiped the company, but he didn't know it yet. The system would take hours to come back up, or try to. Wouldn't realize the data was unreadable until they tried to load the user profiles, which would likely happen right in the middle of his resilient investor demo on Wednesday. He had accelerated the launch. He was going to put a bricked platform on a stage in front of the people who gave him $70 million, claim it was fixed, and then hit play. And nothing would happen. I felt a strange calmness settle over me. The fear of the sabotage accusation vanished. Why? Because audits exist. Logs exist. The logs would show I deleted my personal keys upon termination. The logs would show Lucas ordered the hard reset 3 days later. He was digging his own grave, and he had just ordered an excavator to speed up the process. Molly, get out of there, Tyler. Go home sick. You don't want your name on the logs for the next 6 hours. Tyler, way ahead of you. I'm throwing up in the bathroom right now. Thanks for everything, Molly. Miss you? I put the phone down. I needed a lawyer, not to defend myself, but to prepare the defamation suit I was going to file once the dust settled. I looked at the rain outside. It was pouring now. A real Seattle washout. Wednesday, I said. Wednesday is going to be interesting. I went back to my computer and opened the folder I had saved to my personal cloud drive years ago. The one labeled CYA, cover your ass, contained every email where I asked for budget to automate key management, denied by Lucas. Every email where I warned about the single point of failure risks, ignored by Lucas, and the copy of my employment contract detailing the bonus. I wasn't the hacker. I was the whistleblower, and I was about to blow the whistle so loud it would shatter glass. Tuesday night, the eve of destruction. I was sitting on my couch, watching a documentary about deep-sea squids, eating popcorn. It was 11 o'clock p.m., my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, but the area code was local. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again immediately, same number and again. I paused the squid documentary. I picked up the phone. "This is Molly, it's Dave." The voice was raspy, tired. Old school Dave, the founder. The CEO who had checked out to a vineyard and left his idiot son in charge. "Hello, Dave," I said, my voice neutral. "Didn't think you knew how to operate a phone anymore. I thought you only communicated via wine recommendations." "I deserve that," he sighed. "Look, Molly, I'm at the office. It's a bloodbath down here." "I heard," I said. "I read the article. Apparently I'm a malicious hacker." "Lucas is an idiot," Dave snapped. The first sign of life I'd heard from him in years. He panicked. He put out that statement without clearing it with legal. "We're retracting it." "That's nice." "Damage is done, Dave. Molly, please, we can't access the data. The customer volumes are locked. The encryption keys, they're gone." "They aren't gone, Dave. They were on my keychain, the digital one. When Lucas fired me, I deleted my personal credentials. As per security protocol, you can't leave unauthorized keys on a production server. We need them back," Dave said. His voice cracked. "The demo is tomorrow at 9 a.m. The investors are flying in. If we don't show a working product, the Series B is pulled. The company folds. Everyone loses their jobs. Tyler, Alina, everyone." He was playing the guilt card, using the innocent bystanders. "That's tragic, Dave, really. But I don't work there, and I don't have the keys anymore. I deleted them." "Gone. Poof. Don't lie to me, Molly," he shouted, desperate now. "You're the most paranoid engineer I've ever met. You have a backup. Have a cold storage USB somewhere. You always have a backup." I went silent. He was right. I did. I had an encrypted USB drive in my safe. It contained the master seed key. If I walked into that office, plugged it in, and typed in my 64-character passphrase, I could decrypt the volumes. I could save the company in 10 minutes. I looked at the popcorn bowl. "I might," I said slowly. "Hypothetically." "Name your price," Dave said instantly. "Pay the bonus." "The 30 grand. Wire transfer tonight," I laughed. A dry, harsh sound. 30 grand, Dave, you accused me of a felony. You dragged my name through the mud. And you think you can buy me back for the money you already owed me? 50 grand, double the bonus. No, 100,000 cash. It's not about the money anymore, Dave. It's about the lesson. What lesson? That you're vindictive? No, I said. Lesson that you can't treat the people who build your house like they're the dirt you sweep off the porch. You let Lucas run wild. You let him steal from me. You stood there at the party and watched him fire me for asking for what was mine. You chose him. Now you have to live with him. Molly, please, I'll fire Lucas. I'll put you in charge, VP of Operations. I already have a new job, Dave, ironclad. I start Monday. There was a long silence on the other end. Could hear the background noise of the office, shouting, frantic typing, the hum of chaos. So you're just going to let us die? Dave whispered. I didn't kill you, Dave, I said softy. I just stopped performing CPR on a corpse. Tell me where the keys are, please. I looked at the safe in my closet. Ask your CFO, I said. He's the finance genius. I'm sure he can afford to buy new ones. Click. I hung up. I stared at the phone. My heart was pounding. It felt awful. It felt terrible to say no. To know that I had the cure and I was refusing to administer it. But then I remembered the executive retreat in Tahoe. I remembered the smirks. I remembered the liar. I turned the TV back on. The squid was being eaten by a shark. Circle of life, I muttered. The text came 10 minutes later. From Dave. Dave, we're going to try to restore from a tape backup from 3 months ago. It's all we have. It's going to be a disaster. We have to try. 3 months ago, before the new features, before the UI overhaul, they were going to demo a version of the product that didn't even match the slide deck. It was going to be a slaughter. Wednesday, 8:55 a.m. It was a beautiful morning. The sun had actually broken through the clouds, casting a rare golden light over Seattle. I made pancakes. Blueberry pancakes with real maple syrup. I set up my tablet on the kitchen island. X Level was live streaming the launch event. They had to. It was part of the publicity blitz Lucas had paid for, probably with my bonus money. The feed showed the stage at the convention center. It was slick. Bright lights, pumping techno music, a giant screen displaying the Next Level logo. The audience was packed. Tech bloggers, potential clients, and the heavy hitters, the partners from Sequoia and Andreessen Horowitz. I saw the comments scrolling on the side of the video. User 123 heard they had downtime this week. Crypto King buying calls. To the moon. Tech Insider, this better be good. The valuation is insane. The music faded. The lights dimmed. A spotlight hit the center stage. Lucas walked out. He looked rough. Even in HD, I could see the bags under his eyes. The makeup team had tried to cover it. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in 72 hours. His suit, a new one navy blue, hung a little loose on him. He forced a smile. It was a rictus of terror. Welcome, everyone. His voice cracked slightly. He cleared his throat. Welcome to the future of enterprise logistics. Applause, polite but expectant. We at Next Level believe that speed is everything, Lucas said, launching into his script. That's why we've rebuilt our platform from the ground up. Faster, more secure, more resilient. I snorted into my coffee. Resilient. Today, I'm not just going to tell you about it, Lucas said, sweating visibly now. I'm going to show you. We are going to process a live transaction end-to-end with our new AI-driven engine. He gestured to the giant screen behind him. It switched to a live view of the Next Level dashboard. It looked weird. The fonts were wrong. The colors were slightly off. I recognized it instantly. It was the version 2.4 build, the backup from October. The tape backup Dave had mentioned. They were trying to pass off 3-month-old code as the new Quantum Leap platform. Now, Lucas said, walking over to a podium with a laptop. Let's initiate a global supply chain query. He typed something. I leaned in. This was it. The v2.4 build was stable, sure. It wasn't connected to the live data streams because the API tokens were different back then. And the new AI engine they were touting? It required the new database schema. The schema that was currently encrypted and locked on the bricked production servers. So when Lucas hit enter, the old front end was going to try to call a backend that didn't exist, using credentials that were expired. Lucas hit the key with a flourish. Initiating, he said. The screen showed a spinning loading wheel. Loading, 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 5 seconds, 10 seconds. In tech demos, 10 seconds is an eternity. Lucas laughed nervously. Processing massive amounts of data here, folks. The AI is thinking 15 seconds. The crowd started to murmur. I took a bite of my pancake. It's not thinking, Lucas, it's screaming into the void. 20 seconds, then it happened. The screen didn't just freeze, it vomited. Raw JSON error message splashed across the giant 40-foot screen behind him. Error 500, internal server error. Exception, handshake failure. Fatal, database connection refused error code. You get what you pay for. Just kidding, it was standard null pointer exception code, but in my head it was sassy. Then, the kill shot. Because it was an old dev build, the debug mode was left on. The screen started scrolling the error log in real time for the whole world to see. Failed to authenticate user, mvance admin. Certificate expired, 12/12/2025. Root access denied, root access denied, root access denied, my username, mvance admin, flashing on the screen over and over again. The room went silent. Lucas stared at the screen. He looked like he was about to vomit. Technical glitch, he stammered. We seem to be. Then the screen went black. The feed cut. Technical difficulties. Please stand by. I sat back in my chair. The silence in my kitchen was heavy but peaceful. I picked up my phone. I sent one text to Dave. Molly should have paid the bonus. I didn't wait for a reply. I started cleaning up my breakfast dishes. The collapse was spectacular. It wasn't just a failed demo, it was a viral moment. The blue screen of death heard round the world, Wired called it. By Wednesday afternoon, the investors had pulled the term sheet. The $70 million vanished like smoke. By Thursday, the board of directors had convened an emergency meeting. Lucas was fired. Not just fired, escorted out by the very security guards he used to order around. I heard from Tyler, who miraculously kept his job because he was sick that day, that Lucas was crying in the parking lot. Dave resigned as CEO. Company was put into receivership. They were going to sell off the assets, the IP, the client list, the furniture, for pennies on the dollar. And me? I started at Ironclad on Monday. The office was quiet. The coffee was good, locally roasted. My chair was even better than the one at home. Sarah welcomed me with a hoodie and a laptop that cost more than my car. So, she said, leaning against my desk on the first day. That whole Next Level thing. Did you? She trailed off, raising an eyebrow. I didn't touch a thing, Sarah, I said honestly. I just followed the offboarding procedure. She smiled. Good, we like procedure here. I fit in perfectly. I got my work done. I got paid. And yes, my signing bonus at Ironclad was $40,000. 10 grand more than what Lucas stole from me. But there was one loose thread. 2 weeks later, I got an email. It was from the liquidation firm handling Next Level's assets. Subject: inquiry regarding encrypted volumes. Miss Vance, we are trying to recover data for asset valuation. We see your name all over the logs. Is there any documentation on the encryption standards used? I smiled. I logged into my old personal Git repository, the public one that anyone could see if they just bothered to look at my profile. There, sitting in a repo named Legacy Notes, was a folder I had uploaded the day I was fired. It wasn't hidden, wasn't password protected. It was titled, "Read Me If You Fired Me." Inside was a text file. It contained the instructions on how to regenerate the SSL certificates. It contained the location of the physical backup key, taped under the bottom drawer of my old desk, a classic sysadmin trick. It contained everything they needed to save the company. They had it the whole time. If Lucas had spent 5 minutes looking for a solution instead of looking for a scapegoat, would have found it. If Dave had treated me with respect instead of trying to bribe me, I would have told him where to look. I replied to the liquidator. Molly, check the repo under my desk. Literally. There's a yellow post-it note on a USB drive. I never heard back. I assume they found it. But by then, it didn't matter. The clients were gone. The reputation was ruined. The data was recovered, but it was just a graveyard of information now. I closed my email, put on my headphones. I opened a terminal window and started typing code for Ironclad. Clean, beautiful, functional code. I wasn't the villain. I wasn't the hero. I was just the infrastructure. You don't notice the foundation until the house falls down. And when it does, don't blame the concrete for cracking when you took a sledgehammer to it. I took a sip of my coffee. Life was good. The servers were green. And somewhere in the state, I like to think Lucas is working at a car wash, learning the hard way that you can't just yell at the water to make it clean the car faster. But probably not. He's probably rich enough to fail upwards. That's the world we live in. But me, I sleep just fine.
And that's the story. Take care of yourselves out there. The world's unpredictable enough.